game is going to start to be played in terms of where he could end up next year. But for, as Dan talked about, for HMD Motorsports and Toby Sowery and David Malukas, I mean, fresh off of scoring a win out in Portland, I think they are ready to put a nice bow on this season and looking ahead to what could be a promising 2020.
How about the job John Comiskey did, too? I mean, he bought that team or took over the team a couple of weeks ago, and they arrive in Portland, and Toby Sowery, I mean, we kind of knew he had that kind of performance in him, but that was very impressive in race number 2 when he started third and led 32 laps. And you kept thinking, okay, somebody, because it looked like the tire wear early on was going away for Sowery. So you're thinking, oh, somebody's going to catch up to him, whether it's Askew, whether it's VK, someone's going to be. And Sowery was able to hold off everyone. I think that was a big leap for Toby. And we'll see how it plays out this week. And Sowery's still 6th quick in just the opening moments of this practice session.
Tell me when I can do that.
Don't be surprised if that bright yellow machine is up front throughout the course of the weekend.
Rinus VK, the fastest driver right now in practice at a minute 17.267. In fact, 6 of the 8 drivers have gone sub-minute 18. It's VK, Askew, Norman. Askew and Norman currently sit on pit lane. Robert McGinnis is 4th, so that's Andretti Autosport right now, sitting 2nd, 3rd, and 4th on the speed charts. Then it's the HMD cars of David Malukas and Toby Sowery. The Juncos Racing Machine of Dalton Kellett is 7th, and then Lucas Cole, the one and only car for Bilardi Auto Racing, is 8th fastest right now at a minute 18.790. Want to revisit a topic we were talking about, Rob Howden, kind of about this rise for Oliver Askew and how this racetrack here in Laguna plays such an important role in Oliver Askew's career. And I know a lot of that dates back to the Rotex karting scholarship that really launched his career just a handful of years ago.
Well, you know, the funny thing, Nick, is you look at all these drivers and how they get the opportunity to somehow work their way into the road to Indy. You know, a number of them have won scholarships here and there. And we talk about Spencer Piggott and the scholarships that he had that have helped him work his way into the NTT IndyCar Series. Oliver right there as well. He did get a chance to win one of those Rotax scholarships, which gave him a chance to test in a USF 2000 car. But really, the big thing that the Road to Indy did, in addition to all the scholarships they've had, you guys mentioned, Dave, you talked about the big checks we'll be passing out on Monday night at the banquet. USF 2000 champion getting a scholarship to go to Indy Pro champion, of course, to Indy Lights, the Indy Lights champion into the program in the NTT IndyCar Series. But you know, a couple of years ago, the Road to Indy came up with their program where they were having that $200,000 scholarship. They brought over in that shootout all the champions of F1600, F2000, different series around the world to have an international field come here to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca to essentially battle it out for that $200,000 scholarship to go USF 2000 racing. There were some tremendous drivers we saw from Formula Ford, Formula 1600, F4, a number of different teams came over, drivers came over, and it was Oliver Askew that came, you know, to that final group of 5 drivers, and he ended up winning that scholarship. And I think without that, I don't think we would have seen Oliver Askew in USF 2000. He's the driver who needed that initial scholarship to come in. And then you talked about how many races he won that first year, was able to run with Cape Motorsports. He wins the championship. Without these scholarships, without being here at Laguna Seca and getting that shootout scholarship, we may not even see an Oliver Askew doing what he's doing right now. And when that storyline continues to develop, when he's had his time in the NTT IndyCar Series, and we see him winning races in that program, we're going to look back at that scholarship and say, without that, there would not have been an Oliver Askew at the top level.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rob, and it's a great storyline. And Dave, those are the easy stories to root for, quite honestly, for fans, of knowing that Oliver Askew in some respects is a throwback of a guy who, as Rob talked about, doesn't necessarily have the financial backing, and that's where we see these scholarships are truly making dreams come true when you can pocket quite a bit of cash to take to the next level and pursue a high-level racing career. It's a fantastic story, and Oliver Askew, I think, is going to be a very deserving champion.
It's funny. I mean, you go to a lot of dirt track events in the Midwest, and as do I. And all these guys need is a shot.
Yep.
A proper shot at something. There's a lot of talent that, frankly, we never see because guys don't get an opportunity. And it is so wonderful to see a kid like Oliver. I call him a kid. He's 22. Is that still a kid? I don't know.
It is to you, yes.
Oh, to me.
To me, a little bit too.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I didn't know how to phrase that properly.
Just got weird. But anyway, but yeah, and he's taking advantage. It's one thing to have an opportunity. It's another thing to take advantage of it. I mean, he won 7 races and 7 poles, ironically enough, in that USF 2000 championship. Now here we are a couple years later back with 7 wins and 7 poles for Oliver Askew. So he's got to be excited just to come to a place. There's not a lot of stress. Yes, there is stress. You obviously want to win some more races and put the car in pole position. But just to kind of enjoy this weekend, too. I have a feeling that's what his parents and certainly Oliver's doing this weekend.
$2.2 million going to be handed out on Monday's season-ending banquet for the Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires.
Now, how much does Rob get of that?
Rob, of the $2.2 million, do you get point? I don't know. How much do you
get
pocket,
a percentage
Rob?
of that, Rob?
I believe I'm going to get a new hat.
There you go.
I think it's what I was told. Potentially a hat, yeah.
There you go.
That's not too shabby. Rob, let's take a second to talk a little bit about these other championships because they may be, from a competitive standpoint, a little more interesting coming into this weekend than what we have here in Indy Lights, especially, I think, this incredible season that we've seen in Indy Pro 2000 with Kyle Kirkwood and Rasmus Lindh really going back and forth this season.
Well, it's really interesting in both USF 2000, Nick, and Indy Pro. It's kind of one driver had the momentum early in the season, and another driver picked it up mid-season to kind of push through to the very end. In USF 2000, I'll start there. Braden Eves won 5 races earlier in the season, but Hunter McElroy all of a sudden at Road America kind of settled in. His Pabst Racing crew really dialing things in with that young driver, and he's been able to go on to tear. He's really been the driver to beat. He's actually taken the point championship lead by 6 points over Braden Eves. But again, it's that close, and at a race here this weekend when we have 66 points up for grabs in total, that championship's not going to be done until we wrap things up on Sunday morning. Same with Indy Pro 2000, as you said, Rasmus Lindh for Juncos Racing, kind of following in the footsteps of Rinus VK for Juncos, trying to win another championship. But Kyle Kirkwood with RP Motorsports USA, it's amazing. I think he's won 21 of 28 starts, something like that over the last 2 years, because of course Kyle Kirkwood, Nick, resetting the single season USF 2000 victory record last year, and he has been on such a streak. Obviously, that happened right around when you had him in the booth with IndyCar Radio.
Yep, no doubt about it. That's the voice of Rob Howden down on pit lane. Dan Rusanowski joins him. My name's Nick Yeoman. Dave the Kid First joins us here in the booth.
And Rob's getting a new hat
Rob's
this weekend.
Getting a
That's
new
cool.
hat.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. This is Indy Lights practice. Rinus VK, the fastest right now at a minute 17.267. Oliver Askew is second quick. He's just under 2/10 off of Rinus's quick laps, so still very, very close. Ryan Norman is right there at a minute 17.52. Robert McGinnis at a minute 17.59. David Malukas goes a .62. Toby Sowery a .74. So all told, that's the top 6 within less than a half a second. So still very, very competitive despite the smaller field size. We've seen it all year long. It's just a 1/10 of a second here or there. And that's the difference between maybe winning a race, being on a podium, scoring a pole position, or maybe having to fight your way through mid-pack when we drop the green flag. And we're going to drop the green flag a couple times this weekend for the Indy Lights. Race number 1 is tomorrow at 2:55 Pacific time, 5:55 Eastern time. Dave, they're going to be on the racetrack, kind of different than what we're used to, right after IndyCar qualifying, after we lay a lot of that Firestone red rubber down on the racetrack. That's going to be interesting for some of these drivers.
Just thinking about that. That thing's going to be rubbered up pretty good after IndyCar qualifying. But, I mean, how many times do we go to a racetrack and there are other series, whether it's stock cars or sports cars or whatever, and the rubber that they lay down doesn't really marriage well with Indy Lights, the Cooper tires, or the Firestones that we see. This series, it works pretty well together, and I can't tell you the last time where an Indy Lights guy got out of the car and said, "Oh, the rubber, the track wasn't rubbered up," or vice versa. So I wouldn't expect anything like that here this weekend.
Yeah, and at this point of the season, these guys are used to it too. If there is any challenge of navigating a racetrack with different types of rubber laid down, these guys are used to it because, as we talked about, in a lot of these weekends, especially the road and street circuit events, we really pack them with lots of on-track activity. That's why it's so much fun for these race fans to come out and see racing, because you can get here early in the morning and stay until the sun's about to set, and you're going to see cars on the racetrack. That's what it's all about. But again, race number 1 tomorrow, 2:55 Pacific time, 5:55 Eastern time, and then race number 2 It leads right up to the IndyCar event. It's an early morning out here on the West Coast, 8:55 Pacific time. Right around noon, we'll go live on the East Coast for Indy Lights race number 2. Back to pit lane. We'll check in once again with Rob Houghton.
Yeah, Nick, a lot of action actually down here on pit lane. Drivers coming in, making some adjustments. Toby Sowery came in and made a little minor adjustment, sent him back out. That's the sound of the HMD number 79 to David Malukas. He'll head back out as well. Robert McGinnis, they're doing some work on the rear of that car, as they are to the number 21 of Rinus VK for Juncos Racing. Some work being done to the rear of that. What I haven't seen yet is anyone thinking about putting on fresh Cooper tires. Toby Sowery does have a set out here, but nobody thinking about going to fresh rubber as of yet. I will give you an update on Dalton Kellett. I talked about the fact that they had some fire, some flame coming out of the left side exhaust. They were able to get it, they thought, figured out, buttoned him back up, refired again. Then he had some actual liquid coming out, some fluid coming out of the rear of the car. Might have been actually out of the gearbox. At that point, they said they were done. Dalton climbed out, and they've actually pulled that car and taken it back to back to the paddock already. So Dalton Kellett at a track here where you need some seat time. We need as much track time as possible. We haven't tested here. Dalton not able to get this full session, and he'll be behind the 8 ball, let's say, when we go qualifying this afternoon.
No bueno, not good for Dalton Kellett. He just turned 5 laps in this one and only practice session. So as Rob talked about, behind the 8 ball and dealing with some adversity. Not good to start this final weekend of the year for Dalton Kellett. His fast lap at a minute 18.48. But again, the concerns for that team, not as much about finding speed and more about making sure that they can button up the reliability issues so that car can race twice this weekend. Got a new driver at the top of the timing and scoring charts. It is Oliver Askew, the points leader, as he has jumped ahead of Rinus VK and got him by 5/100ths of a second. Very slim margin. Askew now P1 at a minute 17.207 to VK's 2:67. Ryan Norman still sits in third. Robert McGinnis is 4th, David Malukas 5th, Toby Sowery is 6th, Dalton Kellett is 7th, Lucas Cole is 8th, and now Askew goes even faster, now at a minute 17.195, and he's going to bring that Index Invest car to pit lane. We got a really cool shot, Dave, on our multi-screen monitor of watching the onboard shot of that car, and listen, we're 27 minutes into this race, or this practice session, and for the first time, I'm going to bring up the corkscrew because it is maybe the signature part of this racetrack. Watching that onboard shot of him navigate the corkscrew and really all 11 turns here, it is spectacular here at Laguna Seca.
It is a drop of, what, about 5 stories? Is that the general consensus out there? And overall elevation changes around this 2.2-mile circuit of about 300 feet or so. It is a spectacular layout and fun to watch these guys wheel these machines around. We were talking about Dalton Kellett and the fact he's only turned 5 laps today. He is one of the guys, one of the few guys that does actually have some experience here at Laguna Seca. Back in 2015, he had turned, well, he's a 6th and a 5th in Indy Pro 2000, the old Pro Mazda machine. So he's got a little bit of experience, but man, you need every ounce of track experience, certainly in this car, when it comes to getting ready for qualifying later this afternoon.
16 minutes to go in practice. It's Askew, VK, and Norman, the top 3. Let's go back to pit lane and Dan Ruzanowski.
Yeah, an update on Rinus VK. Last race at Portland, they didn't spend a lot of time making a ton of adjustments, but obviously the lack of practice at this circuit is requiring more of that, some suspension work and some other work as well on the car, and more of an extended stay, but now he's back on the circuit. And of course, Rinus VK, one of the top drivers in this series all season long, certainly had a big race in Portland, but I think it gets back to the idea that that these guys just haven't had the practice here. And you mentioned the corkscrew, what that does to the handling, how you have to make adjustments to it, all things that the drivers are going through right now in this practice session. And a lot more going on too. Let's go to Rob Houghton.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Obviously, there's been a couple of series already on the racetrack so far here earlier today, one of them being the USF 2000 program. The fastest driver there from Pabst Racing was Colin Kaminsky. Now, Colin, you've gone to a lot of different racetracks. Sometimes we get a promoter's test day on the Thursday before a weekend. You guys didn't get that. So your first time on the racetrack is a 30-second practice session ahead of qualifying this afternoon. So we're kind of putting the pressure on you young guys, but you were very quick and were able to be P1 at the end of that half-hour session. But talk about the first couple couple of laps, because before we came on the air, you were telling me about coming up to the corkscrew for the first time and literally kind of stretching your head to peer over top to see what it looked like.
Yeah, Rob, that's exactly what I did. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get a test day here like we've been so lucky to have at like Mid-Ohio and Portland and stuff like that. And I know a lot of the guys haven't been here because, you know, Road to Indy hasn't been here in a couple years, and it's fantastic that we're back at this awesome racetrack now that I can say that. Yeah, you know, first couple laps was just trying to find my way around, get my visuals down, and yeah, like you said, coming up to the corkscrew for the first time, I literally tried to look over my steering wheel a bit and see, oh, there's the road, and then just kind of get that muscle memory down. And you know, the Paps team gave me a great car to try and push those boundaries a little bit, and this place definitely exceeded my expectation, and it's a fantastic place to drive.
And did you get a chance, like many of these drivers, did you drive it on iRacing? Did you use the simulator a little bit to get a feel for the racetrack, or did you come in here blind?
A little bit of both. So I've had a simulator for a couple years now, just trying to get, you know, the feel for things. And I've done a lot of Laguna Seca in years past, but unfortunately, my software hasn't been up to date, and I've actually not been able to get any simulator work done. So it's just been a lot of notes and watching other people's videos and things like that, trying to get that feel down.
So that begs the second question. You guys get a half-an-hour session. You got down to a pretty good lap time. Do you feel that there's still lots out there that you haven't been able to pick up yet?
There's so much left out there. I mean, I was telling, you know, and other people, we go to Mid-Ohio, and sometimes we get so much testing, you almost start changing things you're doing right into a wrong direction, whereas like you come here, you get a half an hour on track to feel this place out for the first time, start to push for the first time. The tires are going away by the time you're up to speed personally. There's a lot of different things that come at you, and yeah, you just know as a driver that there's so much time left out there that we're going to find more time to keep going quicker.
Hey, nicely done today. Good luck in qualifying this afternoon.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Colin Kaminsky from Paps Racing, P1 Nick, this morning in USF 2000. As he said, because they don't know this racetrack, even though they had a full half-hour session, he got down to a really good lap time. There's still so much to go in that 20-minute qualifying session they're going to have. It's probably going to be 15 minutes of practice and 5 minutes of qualifying at the end for these drivers really to lay a lap down to see if they can go for pole.
A lot of learning on the fly, and that's what you like to see from these drivers, Dave. You want to see which ones can pick up a brand new racetrack quickly, adapt and take what it gives you.
I'm going to guess his simulator's a little bit better than my Forza 7 that I have back home.
See, I play Mario Kart, so it's probably a little bit better than that one too. Not a lot translates there.
So you're throwing bananas out the car. And
have you? I mean, I know in Indianapolis. Have you seen the Honda simulator that they have?
Yeah,
I mean,
I've been in it actually.
Incredible.
It is unbelievable.
The technology that's out there now with iRacing and you know the tracks are laser scanned and they've got these setups with the rigs that motion censored, and then at the high level, as we talked about, the one that you said you've been in, the one that Honda has. I mean, it's just the type of feedback that it gives you is incredible.
Honda has one in Brownsburg, Indiana. It's a suburb just located west of Indianapolis, and then Chevrolet has one in Charlotte too. So occasionally, if you follow these guys, the IndyCar guys on Twitter, if you know they don't live in Charlotte, all of a sudden you see the Charlotte tweets, you know exactly what they're doing. They're hopping on the simulator down there at Chevrolet. So it is amazing, and it's so lifelike too. You watch these e-games, iRacing, and it does. I think maybe not physically, but just in your mind anyway, it gets you a good reference point when you come to a racetrack like this.
Yeah, I think that's what most drivers will tell you. I mean, nothing really can duplicate the seat of your pants feel of actually being in a race car. But from a visual standpoint of braking points and what it looks like, in the cockpit around each corner, I think that stuff can only help. I'm not saying that if you get really good at a simulator that you're ultimately going to be a great open-wheel race car driver. There is something to be said about that. But, man, it's just amazing the technology that's out there.
I will say this, though. Some of these guys, when they hop out of these really nice simulators, they are sweating.
Yeah. The ones that move and can give you those lateral Gs and the forces that you feel in the race cars, it's pretty incredible. Oliver Askew, still the fastest here as we've just got about 10 minutes left in this final Indy Lights practice of the season here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna. Seca championship weekend for the road to Indy. Askew at P1, still at a minute 17.195, so it was about 2 or 3 laps that he reset his fastest lap, and now has brought that number 28 machine back to pit lane as the crew will look over that automobile. Rinus VeeKay is second fastest, Ryan Norman third, Robert McGinnis fourth. A lot of cars right now, Dave, on pit lane. Looks like VeeKay and McGinnis the only ones out there pounding the pavement here at Laguna Seca.
My best guess, and maybe Rob and Dan can chime in, my best guess, they might throw on a sticker set here at the end, perhaps. 4 new sets of Cooper tires for the weekend and a carryover set from race weekend at Portland a couple of weeks ago. That's all they got to deal with. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some stickers going on.
Rob, a lot of movement down there on pit lane?
Yeah, that's exactly it, guys. I was wondering whether or not we'd see any stickers or not, but they've got sticker tires laid out here right now for Ryan Norman. It looks like they're going to go to sticker tires as well for Oliver Askew. Here comes Robert McGinnis into pit lane in the number 27. He's got tires laid out. They are buttoning things up, though, for Toby Sowery, putting some tape over the Zeus fasteners on the side of the car as well, trying to get the thing as streamlined as possible. They don't have any fresh rubber for Toby Sowery yet, guys. He's actually refired. He's going to go back out with those scuffs again. He does have fresh rubber beside him on pit lane, but he's heading out right now. As you guys said, we're less than 10 to go. They may be trying to hold on to some rubber like they did at Portland.
It paid off for him in Portland. In fact, that was one of the first things, I think, when Toby Sowery hopped out of that car after winning the race, the second race on Sunday. He flat out pointed out, yeah, we nailed the strategy by making sure we had a set of fresh Cooper tires for the race. So it's something that the HMD this team might have stumbled upon as a good strategy to get him a second race win here before it's all said and done.
If it works at Portland, it'll work at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca.
Yeah.
Perhaps. There's no question about it. Keep in mind, too, I mean, you talk about the track rubbering up and all that. IndyCar was on this track pretty much all day yesterday. So there is a lot of rubber laid down. But one of the funny things that all these guys climbed out of their cars yesterday, they were talking about a lack of grip. You know, we went to Sonoma for a number of years, and this is this similar situation where it's weathered in, a lot of sand, a lot of dust on this track, and kind of like Portland a couple of weeks ago, but very similar situation. There is a lack of grip. We expect that to change over the course of the weekend as more and more rubber gets laid down, but right now there is some laid down after about 6 hours of testing that the NTT IndyCar Series had yesterday on a test session day at the track.
And I want to bring in Dan Ruzanowski. Dan, you and I talked a little bit about that here before you went down to pit lane, coming out to this racetrack for many, many years. I mean, this track surface, it's been here for quite a while, and it's certainly got a lot of characteristic for these drivers.
That's absolutely true. And you know what else, too? Everybody talks about the fact that it is extremely slippery at the key breaking points in the track, and that's an interesting factor in this surface. They haven't redone the surface here in many, many years, so obviously that's something that's probably on the calendar for the future, at least coming up. But that's something that's going to be a factor not only in this series, but obviously when the big Indy cars get out there over the weekend.
Certainly, as we talked about, Dave, it was a test session for IndyCar yesterday. A lot of laps turned for the NTT IndyCar Series machines as we, kind of turn our attention to their practice session as they'll be out on the racetrack here in just under a half hour for practice session number 1. That championship still very much up in the air. Joseph Newgarden with a 41-point advantage over Simon Pagenaud and Alexander Rossi. A little bit further back, you see Scott Dixon, who mathematically still has a chance, but it's a slimmer. I saw your report that you did yesterday talking to Scott Dixon. He was pretty honest about his chances.
He laughs about it. He goes, "Why am I even here?" There was a news conference that they had with the 4 contenders. Obviously, the top 3 have a much better shot at the championship. Dixie walks in. He goes, "Well, why am I here?" I mean, there's got to be so much that happens for Dixon to have any shot at picking up his 6th championship. At least he's got good humor about it, but he does want to win, obviously, on Sunday. The guy that was, we talked about the day-long test session they had here yesterday, the guy that was P1, some guy named Colton Herta, who knows his way around these Indy Lights machines as well. So, but it's interesting. They haven't resurfaced this track in a number of years. Did you see, even at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last week, they put more penetrant down, which they did the year before. And so when the IndyCar Series goes back there in 2020, it's even smoother, even more well done. It helped with the rain, getting the track dry throughout the course of the month of May. So it's interesting. Even here we are in the off season, still doing work at a number of racetracks around the country, including the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Is that Colton Herta storyline the one to watch in terms of IndyCar? Now that Alexander Rossi has his future buttoned up of where Colton Herta might end up next year, is that the one that we're watching here?
I think so, yeah. And the bottom line on it is he is going to be in a car in 2020. The only question is, will it be a a team that's badged again with Harding Steinbrenner, or is it more just Andretti Autosport? Those are really the two options. I was talking to some folks yesterday, wouldn't go on the record with it, but they all still believe that Mike Harding's going to be around next year. George Michael Steinbrenner, the fourth, definitely will be around next year. The faces won't change. It's just a matter of where things are going to really fall, and they won't know really for another couple months probably.
5 minutes to go here in practice. Let's check in one more time with our guys on pit lane. We'll start with Dan Rusanowski. Guys, it looked like it was awful busy down there as most of the drivers are going back onto the racetrack here.
That's right, Nick. And you know what else? Everybody is putting fresh rubber on, at least at the front of the pit lane. Oliver Askew, Ryan Norman going out. Robert McGinnis has some on, too, as they're still working on his car. But it looks like that's the modus operandi of everybody, except for, at least at this point, Rinus VeeKay, who's sitting in there. So that's the update at this point.
Looks like we've got issues for Lucas Cole in turn number 8 as he has spun that Red Bellardi auto racing car around. Got it
bottom of the corkscrew there.
Yeah, got it pointed in the right direction and kind of rolled it back down the hill. Can't be too difficult to do that here at Laguna Seca, I would imagine, for young Lucas Cole. Still trying to find some pace. His fast lap right now at a minute 18.591. But Rob Howden, again, as we talked about it, a lot of time, 40 minutes for these drivers to learn. Seems like here over the last 5 minutes, we're going to start pushing to try to find some qualifying laps.
Well, that's what's really interesting about it, Nick. The Andretti drivers all putting fresh rubber on, but those tires I talked about, the fresh Coopers for Toby Sowery, still sitting here. He's not putting any tires on. They continue to do some work here on Rinus VeeKay's machine for Juncos Racing. He doesn't have any new rubber at all, but they did make a number of changes, so we could have some drivers holding on to tires here. And in fact, they're going to put those tires of Toby Sowery back up on the pit cart. One interesting note, you look back at this car, this Dallara IL-15, and again, last time we were here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca was 2016, but we finished off the season the first year with the IL-15 here in Monterey, and of course the driver who won the championship for Juncos Racing was Spencer Pigot. I quickly went over and talked to Ricardo Juncos, and I said, listen, you guys won the champion here in 2015. Is the setup similar now to that it was back then, or you guys evolved it quite a bit? And he just looked at me and said, I don't remember. Quite coy, of course. Mike Reggio, the engineer, did say, yeah, it's very similar to what we had in 2015, but Ricardo's being a little coy with me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Things change over the years, so sometimes that stuff doesn't translate over. We just got a replay of what happened to Lucas Cole, as we talked about, spun at the bottom of the corkscrew. That car parked right in the middle of the racetrack for a few brief moments, Dave. That's got to be a pretty hopeless feeling. Thankfully, the young Brazilian got it spun back around. That's not really where you want to park a race car, though.
No, you're watching left and right. You're just hoping that nobody comes over that rainy curve area down by the end of the corkscrew. But you can get caught in some trouble out here. There's no question about it. But good to see everything worked its way through. And Lucas Cole, who has spent the season really just kind of learning. This has been a good learning year for that young Brazilian. And we look forward to seeing him back in 2020 in the Indy Lights Series.
Just 2 minutes to go. It is Oliver Askew at a minute 17.195. He set that fast lap about 15 minutes ago here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It is a 7/100ths of a second gap between he and Rinus VeeKay. That is not much to VeeKay's 117.267. Then it's Ryan Norman third. His Andretti Autosport teammate Robert McGinnis is fourth. Those drivers, in fact, consistently in this practice session have been right there just behind the top two in the championship, third and fourth. Then it's David Malukas fifth. Toby Sowery is sixth. Dalton Kellett, if you're just joining us, did have problems, had a fire on that car down on pit lane. Rob Howden talked about they did everything they could, thinking they got it fixed, but ultimately decided to take that car behind the wall as Kellett turned just 5 laps in this practice session. So it's going to be an uphill battle for him with qualifying looming a little bit later this afternoon. He was 7th quick, though, in those 5 laps, and then it is Lucas Cole, who was 8th. Rob Howden?
Yeah, Nick, if we think maybe a bit about strategy right now, because we talk about the fact that Rinus VeeKay has not put fresh rubber on, neither did Toby Sowery, but all the Andretti cars did. And of course, Oliver Askew with such a different approach to this weekend. If he has a good day tomorrow, he's going to lock up the championship, and Sunday will be a cakewalk. He can enjoy himself. They are, of course, putting fresh rubber on Oliver. He went out here to get a good feel for it, knowing that this track is tough to pass on. It could be a bit of a track position race to a certain extent. Even though when the tires go off, it could be a little easier to overtake. I'm sure that they're saying, hey, let's get Oliver driver, make sure he's on the pole position for race number 1. Let him go out. Let him get through turn 1, 2, and 3. If there's any chaos behind him, he can get through cleanly. Let's see if we can't win this first race, take all the pressure off in race 1, and Sunday will be just a nice, relaxing day for the driver for Andretti Autosport.
Well, he is winning this first practice session. There's no doubt about it, Dave. How about that lap that Oliver Askew just turned?
How about to the tune of over a half a second quicker that last time around? Sticker Cooper's coming up to temperature, no question about it. Oliver Askew now at a minute 16, so the first to go sub 117, minute 16.557 as the checkered flag comes out on the session.
Yep, and Robert McGinnis just found some speed as well. So as Rob talked about, that gamble, I don't know if you want to call it a gamble. They're kind of finding out what they've got and putting on fresh tires is paying off for Andretti Autosport, as in the final minutes here, final seconds really, of practice as the checkered flag is out. The Andretti Autosport teammates have found some speed. Oliver Askew fastest at a minute 16.55. Robert McGinnis jumps to P2 at a minute 17 flat. Then it's Rinus VeeKay, who looks like he will stand on his minute 17.267 as he has crossed the start-finish line to end his practice session. Then it's Ryan Norman, who's 4th quick. David Malukas is 5th. Toby Sowery 6th. Dalton Kellett 7th. Lucas Cole is 8th. And based on Oliver Askew, who just reset the fast lap again at a minute 16.349. Dave, now he's got a full 0.6 of a second on the entire field. That is flat getting it done.
Remember, not everyone on those Cooper sticker set of Cooper tires, but still, that is flying around this 2.2 mile 11-turn layout at a minute 16.3. Okay, statement made here in this practice session for Oliver Askew.
Hey, don't look now. Robert McGinnis there in the final seconds. Clearly, both of those Andretti Autosport drivers liking their race cars because he just laid down a big lap as well. In fact, McGinnis, the final driver on the racetrack as he pulls his car back into pit lane. Not fast enough to knock Askew off the top, but he at least got in the same area code within 0.2 of a second at a minute 16.544. So a nice run for Robert McGinnis, and Ryan Norman makes it a clean Andretti Autosport sweep as he jumps Rinus VeeKay to 3rd here in the final seconds of practice. So Askew, McGinnis, Norman go 1, 2, 3. Then it's VeeKay. Then it's the BN Racing teammates of Malukas and Sowery. Then, of course, Dalton Kellett and Lucas Cole. As we see a lot of these drivers popping out of these race cars. A reminder, coming up on the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network, we will have live coverage of IndyCar practice number 1 for the NTT IndyCar Series. Coming your way in about 13 minutes. Mark Janes, Dave First, Jake Query, Dan Ruzanowski will guide you through that 45-minute practice session. IndyCar will be back on track at 2:10 Pacific time, and then Indy Lights qualifying again, all on IndyCar Radio at 3:55 Pacific. Let's hear from the fastest driver of the 8 here in practice. It's Oliver Askew standing by with Rob Howden.
Well, Oliver, you know what you have to do here this weekend to be crowned the Indy Lights champion. Check off the first box. I feel comfortable with the race car. I like the track, and I'm fast.
Yeah, we're going for wins this weekend, that's for sure. The car felt really good. I cannot tell you how fun this track is around here in an Indy Lights car. I can't imagine what an Indy car feels like, but it's a lot of fun. The car feels good, and we're going to make some positive changes for qualifying this afternoon.
Obviously, getting on this track, you didn't get a chance to do any testing. You get a 45-minute session. Was that enough to get you to, you think you're 100%, or have you left some out there still that you'll be able to pick up in qualifying?
You can always gain a little bit of time with more track time around here. It's extremely technical, and the track's going to be changing quite a bit. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the track's a little bit worse in the afternoon because heat plays a big part in lap time around here. So we'll try to take that in consideration and use what Andretti Autosport has for knowledge around here in the years prior.
You know, down the stretch, you talked about the fact that you weren't feeling a lot of stress. The wins were coming. You guys had momentum. There can't be much stress here this weekend as well. You get the job done. Are you able to kind of take it in? Are you able to remember this time?
Definitely, and I think he'll be able to take it in a lot more Sunday afternoon when it's all over. So right now, the main goal is to keep doing the best I can and hopefully win a couple races because, you know, IndyCar teams are always watching.
Nicely done this morning.
Thank you.
Nick Yeoman, fast driver again. He is looking to try to win this championship. The number 28 Index Invest Machine, Oliver Askew, P1, morning practice.
Yep, putting the finishing touches on what has been an impressive season for Oliver Askew. He opens up championship weekend with a P1 in practice. That's going to do it for Indy Lights practice again. 10 minutes away, IndyCar back out of the racetrack as they will start the weekend with practice number 1. Great job by Dan Rusanowski and Rob Howden on pit lane. For day first, I'm Nick Yeoman. So long from now from Laguna Seca.